I want you and that young man to tie that knot. I'm gonna pray for you. And I want you to hold on to God's unchanging hand, because he helped Joshua fight the battle of Jericho. Yes.
It's the old
He helped Daniel get out the lion's den. He helped get off the island.
Let me get straight to the business. Got them lions in the building. Why you lying to the children? Why you lying to the children? RIGHTEOUS. Man, you know I've been to bed. Man, they know contest. Yahuwah, he do the bless. We will not see you tomorrow. Cause you cannot go to thought. All the sons and all the daughters. Standing all with big manodas. But my son, he made me Taurus. On that line, I'm still a Taurus. Karate kicking Chuck Norris, 4-5 on my waist. If he started, will not hesitate to get retarded. Oh lordy, he ain't got a PowerPoint, he farted. He running into the hills like a Philistine. Jihad hitting Hamites with the guillotine. Situation turned up with the Ratchet team. JJ 7000 to the debate lead. Yeah, I know them haters gon' hate me, but he won't debate me. Pistol off safety. He respond, come wake me. If I don't get up, nigga shake me. If he don't show up, then he fake G. I touch down and make these nigga nuts hate me. Dear brother, ballin' and crawling all the way from H-Time. Let me get straight to the business. Man, them lions in the building. Why you lying to them children? Why you lying to them children? You gon' cry, you gon' get it. Me, I'm like a frog, nigga, ribbit. Of course, it's in the spirit. I just got the Porsche, she can steer it. Mito got the raw, Shaq and Willie. Lamborghini doors, you better not spill it. Mama's high, say I'm more than just a villain. Mama's cry, I'm dope and wide for her children. Suicide, immortalized as the realest, yeah. Death by gun, black suicide. Let me get straight to the business. Got them lions in the building. Why you lying to them children? Why you lying to them children? RIGHTEOUS. Man, you know I've been there. Man, they know contest. Yahuwah, he do the bless. Wow, what's that? Why didn't take it over? Number one debate league, you heard me? When it's up, it's stuck.
Yeah, Lions is in the building. Get out your feelings. That's right. Peace and blessings. Welcome to the Lions Den. My name is Mandinka, aka JJ7K, the most field debater on this planet. Sit your ass down, cause I know you can't stand it. You hear me, ladies and gentlemen? I got these guys out here ducking and diving, slipping and sliding, scrambling and scraping. As if P. Diddy was behind him. I ain't no Diddy. I'm not a diddler, but I will run you off the debate scene. You hear me? You know what I'm saying? But hey, like I said, man, y'all see the title of this, man. Y'all see the title. CEDRIC Ortega gets schools by Mandinka Molly 7000. Again, he didn't learn from the first ass whooping. Educational ass whooping, ladies and gentlemen. You see? But before I get into it, hey, peace to my wife, Jenny Hayes. Shout out to the Queen, Sister Karima of the Lions Den. Go ahead and introduce yourself before I get into the meat and potatoes of the whole situation. We gonna get into it anyway. I think Sister Karima might be, it's a little late, so we gonna run it how we go. Yeah, man. I did a presentation a couple days ago Shout out to DMG over there on Paradigm Shift. I see the growth and development in your channel. It's starting to really flow. But I made an open challenge out to anybody who would like to defend Eurocentric philosophies. And when I say by what I mean by Eurocentric philosophies is when I'm talking about atheism, because it's not, for our people. It was not a driving force, something that we thought about every day in life. It came from Europeans. That's why I don't understand why these guys fight so hard to defend this. That's why I don't understand why brothers will disassociate you and call you ignorant and dumb because you don't believe in a European philosophy. I'm not racist or nothing, but certain things are catered to certain groups of people. And so we had this guy, Cedric, Ortega, Soldier K9, who didn't learn the lesson from the first time. And he's real aggressive and makes a lot of demands, and you got to do this and try to change the narrative and say you got to say this, and this is what you got to pinpoint in the debate. No, you came to the goddamn stage that day. You've seen the title, Cedric. African spirituality versus atheist philosophy. Because I don't understand where you guys are getting this from. Why is it so important to you? Why are we so incorrect and you're right? Why are we missing things but you on point? But ladies and gentlemen, then when you ask them, well, what about where did you get this from? That's where the red flags go up. That's where they get tongue-tied and twisted. That's when they want to talk about something else. That's when they don't know you no more. Oh, wait a minute, bro. Where you going? Oh, this conversation's over. Hey, this conversation's over. What you mean it's over? How do you always on attacking somebody else's philosophies and beliefs and things that they adhere to and that's important to them? They interconnect them with the Creator in the world and their families, and their ancestors, and you just come up here with this dry ass mayonnaise and say, "No, I don't believe nothing you say." What? That's his defense? I'm an atheist. I don't believe anything because Pinky told me. What bullshit is this? Hey, ladies and gentlemen, what type of, repeat after me, what type of bullshit is this? You're not on my level when it comes to these debates. Brother, you are 5 debates into your little, old debate, young career. You started late. You like a 60-year-old rapper. You hear me? See, and I boosted you up, promoted you, but now you got too big for your goddamn monkey chimp pants. That's right. He running around here talking about we monkey chimps, ladies and gentlemen. Where is this common ancestor? Or materialistic creation and say, I don't have to believe anything you say. You know how many flaws it is in materialistic creationism, sir? A lot of things that materialistic creationism can't even explain, sir. So you ain't on my level, bro. This is why he won't jump on the stage right now. He tried to tell me the other day, I have to pinpoint what African spirituality system I'm talking about. It don't matter which one I'm talking about, bro. Because you don't come on and change no rules when I put the challenge out to any of you Chris Harris's, Uncle West's, Kyle's, the CEDRICs, Kofi Pi Phi research team, the Jujus, the Mika Floridas, the Asar, what's his name? Asar Sevens, and all these people who have doubt or try to say that science can explain everything, and it cannot. What they call it, the hypocritic oath, where the doctors say, they have this little oath that, they got to oblige by. It's the same thing with science. Everything has to be materialistic. They don't want you to know that. Even in their mind, say, "But damn, this is something supernatural. What the heck is going on here?" They have signed an agreement where they don't even have to put that. They're not going to put that into their research because they want to be able to try to explain everything, and you can't. So you have guys like CEDRIC Ortega, Brother Fabio Fambine, and the Garfield types, and all the B-side type of fellas. CEDRIC, how you the A-side, bro? You got 5 debates in your career. Debate career. David Hume, Charles Darwin, Demetrius, and all these Age of Enlightenment type of characters. Why do you always promote them over African spirituality? Hebrew Israelitism. People who say they're Moors. People who say who their nation's God on earth are Islam. People who say they're Christian. Why do you always attack that? And uplift and uphold and say that this is the righteous way of information when you're dealing with these goddamn scientific racists. I don't understand it, sir. So we're trying to set up a debate in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, he's going to defend atheist philosophies, ladies and gentlemen. And it's like you're a proud Caribbean. But do you know what the problem with a lot of you brothers in the islands? You run around in your little swim trunks, but you run around the beach and all that. But then you got the white wig of Parliament on your goddamn head, nigga. Them little white George Washington type wigs. Run around the beach. Imagine that scenario. Run around the beach. Some of you goddamn Jamaica coons run around in your Speedos with a goddamn George Washington, Ben Franklin wig on, nigga. Embarrassing yourself. coming down on us over here in America, telling we don't deserve reparations. These type of characters. The Stu P's and the goddamn Google Scholars and the CEDRICs. Yeah. The Garfields. These type of characters have been influx or acclimated. We didn't invite them, but they have somehow made their way into the community of a real Black Power movement. And Black Power is nothing but, self-worth, recognizing your people, recognizing the importance of your spiritual roots, recognizing, the thing of a community. But they mock and laugh and scoff when you say something about a creator, something greater than yourself. The B-side. The Cubes. These guys in the community, the state of the conscious community, part 8, part 7. These guys who swear they're so intellectual, they act like Greeks and Romans. The ones that got their nose in the air and so sedity and look down upon their own. Well, not their own, but us. Still your culture, your history, your identity. Make you be ashamed of it. Ask yourself, why is that? Why are these guys so embedded, so engraved into our community? These guys are nothing but a cancer. Monkey chimps, apes. Science does not have all the answers. So Karim, if you're there, Cedric's not going to show up. What I like to do is maybe show one round of an educational ass whooping that I put on this character. He don't even know how to debate, ladies and gentlemen. When you debate, if the title was Africans came to the Americas before Columbus, who's the burden of proof is on? Me, because I'm on the African side. I'm on the skeletal remains. I'm on the DNA. I'm on all that. That would be my hypothesis. I would be the lead man in that conversation because I'm proving a point. So him and I debated about 4 months ago, and the title was, did Christopher Columbus come to the Americas before Africans? So the burden of proof now is on you, sir. I could have rocked with the debate on either flip side of the coin because that's how skilled I am when it comes to this information. So Cedric Ortega, supposed to be one of the top heavy hitters over there on Super Killers. And he didn't even know he was the affirmative. Let me repeat that. He didn't even know that he was the affirmative in this debate. He thought he could start off the debate by saying, this is what JJ's going to say. I'm meeting him at the pass before he starts. No, sir, you state your claim. You prove your point to the people. So these guys don't have to debate by defending what they stand on because they all want to attack what you stand on. No, to convince a crowd to be a leader is to have people gravitate towards your perspectives, your views, your plan. This is the objective over here. This is the information that I researched. This is what I'm standing on over here. Now, this other fella over here, he's more Eurocentric. He's more into the age of enlightenment and scientific objectives and what do they call that? Critical thinking. He wants to say that Africans and African Americans did not have the capability of having critical thinking when they're observing nature and when they come into, okay, well, this is the time of the year the crops are going to do this. This is the time of the year when we were dealing with the stars and all this. This was going to happen this time of year. We did not have critical thinking figuring out this type of information. Karima, can you look, Karima? I ain't trying to be up too late, but let me show the first round. I'll send it to you. Me whooping this nigga ass in this debate, and I'm gonna show y'all how can you be the affirmative when you was coming from a negative standpoint, sir. You were coming from you were coming from like you were on the defense when the whole state of the debate was about you proving Christopher Columbus came to these Americas before any melanated person. Now, he wants to try to change the title of the debate because I made a statement, a claim. Did we already show that part, didn't we? Did we show that part when I was over there on Paradise Shift? Did we go over that the other day? I can't remember.
Yeah, we did twice.
Yeah.
We actually
Yeah, see, I'm talking about y'all. Yeah, he don't need no third time chump. Not you, Kareem. You know, you ain't no chump. You shit. But this guy right here, he tries to talk all these words and, objectively speaking, and it's just a bunch of goddamn car wash antics. Wax on, wax off type of nonsense. That's all it is. Deflecting from the main topic. That's what he do. So, Kareem, let me send you. Go ahead and let me send you. Let me send you the video. First round is educational ass whooping that I put on. Kareem, what about them clips I've been showing you? What about that? Let's get into that. Chris Columbus, we ain't gonna do that. This is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna show you. See, Cedric, what you like to do? You always like 7,000 to show you his hand, which I don't have a problem with. That makes the debate. But for some reason, this fella will make statements, claims, but he will not okay, look here, y'all. See what I'm saying? Why I say this is because of what I'm presenting right here. He don't do that. So he always want me to, put out some information. But what he don't know, what I put out right here, probably will never be said again if we meet up in the debate, sir. Because I got different angles. And me and Kareem would be somebody laughing. Like, yeah, that's what they thought. All right. So, Kareem, you got some of them little clips I sent you? If not, hold up. I can play it on the audio.
with the
Something about that.
with Darwin.
So this is what he said. Go ahead, Quinn.
You talking about the last clips with the Darwin?
The last clip talking about materialism, creationism, and like the last things I've been sending you yesterday. I said this is what some of the information I'm gonna bang on if you go into your messenger. Yeah, that's the stuff I can read to y'all. My stance on it. My information I found about it and the flaws of it. Matter of fact, let me I don't know why he wanna, if you're an atheist, well, why don't you stand on that, bro? Why you gotta try to well, we're gonna talk about this one bullet point. No, bro. So Kareem, if you go to your messenger, and I'm gonna go to mine, and I'm gonna show you I'm gonna show the world some of the information. Hold on. Yeah, let's start this. See what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen? Shit, the Lions Den Academy of Education and Information. We bring it out. They want to run around talking about their skepticism and all this. You know, maybe what is really going on? You got some of your master teachers over here talking about themselves. Go ahead, Colonel. Let's get to the information.
Andrew, and this is going to be a response to Bossman 103's latest video criticizing the flaws of methodological naturalism. First off, Bossman, as I was trying to explain in the comments section, your video is not criticizing methodological naturalism. What you appear to be criticizing, and you even mentioned this at the end of your video, although it almost sounded like a slip of the tongue the way you did it, is metaphysical naturalism. That is the position that all that exists is the natural world. Methodological naturalism is simply we can explain the natural world by looking at the natural world. That is, we can take our observations of the natural world and use that to construct hypotheses and then later on theories that make predictions based on other things that we should see in the natural world. That's the foundation of science. Now, has probably been explained many, many times. Science doesn't say that all that exists is the natural world. It only says that we will make predictions based on our observations. It actually makes things up to explain these observations. Quite often, by makes things up, I mean it makes predictions that things should be there. Dark matter, dark energy, for instance. These are all based on observations. The mass that we can see, for instance, and the energy that we detect doesn't match the observations. Ergo, dark matter, dark energy is used as a filler, and we're currently looking for what that filler is, for instance. Now, in particular, one thing in your video that really rubbed me the wrong way, I have to say that, is when you say you object to how they use probability. You really have absolutely no idea what you mean by that. Because the only probability I can think of in methodological naturalism is, say, the probabilities of nuclear decay, the probabilities of in quantum physics. And these are not stuff that's pulled out of the air. These are all based on actual measurements. In other words, the half-life of uranium 235, for instance, that's an actual measurement. The ability of a particular particle decaying is such based on this actual measurement. So what in the world did you mean by that? It made no sense in the context of methodological naturalism. All right. I've got this recorded. I'm going to end it here for now. Hopefully you can clarify. Talk to you later, everybody.
The origin of life, that a complex mixture of simple chemicals self-organized into the very first life forms, is a central idea to the evolutionary paradigm. This is an idea that is a cornerstone idea, a foundational idea that justifies evolutionary biologists looking at all of life's history from an evolutionary perspective. Yet there's no scientific evidence that supports chemical evolution. There's no scientific evidence that supports the origin of life scenario from a naturalistic perspective. Instead, the more that scientists study the origin of life question, the more it seems as if the origin of life is actually a miraculous event. For example, the late Leslie Orgel, a prominent origin of life researcher, said this: metabolism first scenarios, which is just one of the scenarios that scientists think can explain the origin of life. He says metabolism first scenarios require an appeal to magic, a series of remarkable coincidences, a near miracle. Leslie Orgel also said, with respect to the RNA world hypothesis, which is another scenario that scientists think may account for the origin of life, it would be a miracle if a strand of RNA ever appeared on the primitive Earth. Paul Davies, in his book, The Fifth Miracle, which is a book on the origin of life question, said this: although biogenesis strikes many as virtually miraculous, the starting point of any scientific investigation must be the assumption that life emerged naturally. And so here we have scientists admitting that when it comes to the origin of life, not only can we not explain it scientifically speaking, but it actually appears as if it's a miraculous event. Yet the scientific community refuses to entertain the idea that God, a creator, is responsible for bringing life into existence. Well, why is that? And this is a very important point that I think helps us as Christians to think through the evolutionary paradigm and its challenge to the Christian faith, and that is this: that the theory of evolution is as much about philosophy as it is about science. And I'm going to explain in the next few minutes what I mean by that. And to begin, we need to think about how do scientists approach the study of nature. Well, there are philosophical suppositions, there are philosophical assumptions, there's a philosophical framework upon which all scientists use as they investigate the record of nature. Science is about a methodology that is used to study nature, where you posit a hypothesis and then you make observations and test that hypothesis as to whether or not those observations or the experimental results fit the predictions that you would make with that particular hypothesis in play. That's what science is about. It's about a methodology, but many scientists also add an additional requirement, and that those hypotheses, those theories, those models that they employ to explain phenomena in nature rely exclusively on naturalistic mechanisms. That these theories, hypotheses, models exclude any involvement on the part of a creator. This is called methodological naturalism, and it simply means that when scientists study nature, they pretend as if God doesn't exist. They never evoke the work of a creator as a way to explain phenomena within nature. This again is called methodological naturalism, and many scientists who are Christians agree to pursue their scientific investigations of the world by employing this set of philosophical assumptions. Well, what does that mean then? That means that even if the evidence is pointing to, let's say, the origin of life being miraculous, as a scientist, you can never go down that path, as Paul Davies says, because it violates the principles of methodological naturalism. To appreciate the power and the influence of methodological naturalism in the investigation of nature, including the origin of life question and the history of life, consider the statement made by Richard Lewontin, an evolutionary biologist from Harvard University. Dr. Lewontin says this: we take the side of science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, in spite of its failure to fulfill many of its extravagant promises of health and life, in spite of the tolerance of the scientific community for unsubstantiated just so stories, because we have a prior commitment, a commitment to materialism.
Right there, Karim.
The methods and institutions of science somehow somehow compel us to accept a material.
They have a prior commitment to this oath that they have to oblige by. It's like what they call that? The not the hypocritic oath, but it's an oath where like they're taking where it's like, okay, look, even though I know there's some other stuff going on, I cannot put this into my investigation. That's bias. All right, Sister. Please thank
Yep, that's what I said. That's bias. Bias.
you. Yeah. But they're not gonna tell you this.
Explanation of the phenomenal
I'm good.
world. But on the contrary, that we are forced by our a priori adherence to material causes to create an apparatus of investigation and a set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated. Moreover, that materialism is an absolute, for we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. What Richard Lewontin is basically saying is this, is that the scientific community has a pre-commitment to materialism, to methodological naturalism, to only mechanistic explanations for the origin of life and the history of life on Earth. And because of that commitment, even if the evidence is pointing to the work or the involvement of a creator, the scientists cannot go down that path. They have artificially restricted their investigation of nature from allowing them to go down that path. And instead, they have to insist that the origin of life, for example, is through some kind of mechanistic process, no matter how miraculous that process seems to be, given the evidence at hand. And so this brings us to a very important point, and that is this, is that the evidence for evolution can be understood from a creation model perspective that involves the work of a creator. In other words, if we relax this requirement of methodological naturalism, what we see is that is oftentimes cited as evidence for evolution can be readily understood as the work of a creator. Let's take the fossil record as an example. When we look at the history of life on Earth, life has been present on Earth for arguably 3.8 billion years. And it's a history of life on Earth where different time frames in Earth's history, we see different life forms. We see this progression from simple to more complex. And evolutionary biologists look at this and say, this is evidence that life must have evolved because there's different life forms at different times in Earth's history. But if you look at this from a creation perspective, you could say that a creator on the different days of creation created different life forms that existed for a period of time and then were replaced by different life forms in the next day of creation when the creator is at work bringing about his creative purposes. And so we could see the fossil record that is so often cited as evidence for evolution is also evidence for the work of a creator. It's all about the philosophy and the presuppositions that you bring to the table. And I believe that when we look at the fossil record and relax the requirements of methodological naturalism, we're going to see that in the fossil record, the evidence for the work of a creator is more evident than the idea that undirected evolutionary processes account for the history of life on Earth.
Undirected.
You might be owed $85,000 for your accident.
That's what they want to go by. Undirected evolutionary processes. Just boom, just popped up out of nowhere. That's crazy. And want to question us. All right. So hold up. Let me I'm looking for my charger, Kareem. Let's see. Cause if you got another video, I sent you like 3 or 4 of them for us to take a peek at. Go ahead. Yeah, this one right here. Now look here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Remember, you got these Chris Harrises, and Up Wests and Jujus and Sabios and all that little gang, the Garfields, and Cedrics. They say atheism is not a religion. 7,000 went deep at the Lions Den Academy Education and Information. And I'm about to bring it out. Go ahead, Sister Pharaoh. Yeah, I'm glad you played this one. Go ahead.
I had like a whiteboard back here or something. That would be tight. Anyway, as a channel dedicated to history and archaeology and the like, I've talked quite a bit about how religion has manifested itself throughout different civilizations. It's also a super chill thing to talk about and something people don't really get to fussed over. So I'm going to talk about it more. Now religion is seen as more of a set of values and identity rather than the norm or more of a way of life. And that's a relatively new way to see religion. As in past cultures, religion is typically something that the entire society is structured around. And now we have secularity. In the Western world, that is very unique to this time period. So I thought about how it's come to mean what it means today. There is no culture in recorded human history which has not practiced some form of religion. And in the ancient world, religion wasn't just an aspect of life, it was life. The two were intermingled, intermixed, inexorably. One just couldn't exist without the other. And every faction of life was decided upon and undertaken with the knowledge that it would be judged by the gods. Despite this, we do actually see some evidence for a kind of proto-atheism take place within the ancient Western world. In ancient Greece and Rome, theism was the fundamental belief that supported the legitimacy of the state. So if you didn't believe in a god that was upholding this state, essentially you were anti-government and you could be accused of atheism, which was viewed as a capital crime, a crime against humanity itself. How could you not believe in God? More so, how could you not believe in me, your head of state? Any subversion of this state-sanctioned religion charged one of atheism and heresy and could be used to eliminate them if they were a potential political rival. But calling someone from ancient Greece or ancient Rome an atheist didn't have the connotations that it does today. We think of an atheist as someone who does not believe in a god or a higher power. I mean, early Christians used to be accused of atheism because they didn't believe in the Roman pantheon. During the Roman Empire, atheism was Epicurus. This guy's kind of ahead of his time. He gave rise to the idea that the Greek gods were merely mythologized beings. He saw the universe as this great machine of atoms, which the gods were completely irrelevant to. And he wanted to prove that humans had nothing to fear regarding death, because it was just the process of one atomic form transforming into another. How did he even think of that? That would never have crossed my mind, and I am aware of science. Now, it's important to note that Epicurus still believed the gods existed. He just said they were completely uninterested in human affairs and people shouldn't be so caught up on trying to please them and sacrifice to them because they just didn't give a shit. He believed the universe was governed by the force of chance without the need for divine intervention. Epicureanism was expressed perhaps most eloquently in the poem On the Nature of Things by Lucretius in the 1st century BC, in which he held that the gods do exist, but that they were just irrelevant, and that the fear of their wrath was one of the chief causes of human unhappiness. This is reiterated in a fragment of the play Sisyphus by Euripides, in which he claims that a clever man invented the fear of the gods in order to frighten people into behaving morally. Another win for Euripides. Man has never made a bad point. Atheism evolves differently all over the world, and we can see this in ancient China. China was built off of Confucianism, Taoism, legalism, and none of these really rely heavily on religious ideology. Confucianism places immense emphasis on humanistic and worldly relations, as opposed to theology and spirituality. There are no Confucian gods, and Confucius himself is worshipped as a spirit rather than a deity. The core tenet and overarching belief of the system is the importance of having a good moral character, which is an intrinsic and personal experience unrelated to the will of any god. The dominance of Confucianism and its like allowed for China to develop a cultural tendency that made acceptance of modern forms of irreligion like humanism, secularism, and atheism a possibility for most of its history. Since its antiquity, China has held its reputation for being a country devoted to ideologies, very separate from religion. Scholar Hu Shi stated in the 1920s China is a country without religion, and the Chinese are a people bound by religious superstitions. But this idea of atheism, as it becomes the word that we know it as today, really evolves and becomes much more well-defined in modern history. In the Western world, both the Renaissance and the Age of Enlightenment were a little bit fundamental in defining atheism. During the Renaissance, the criticism of the religious establishment became a thing that you could do. You could criticize the religious establishment, and if you're lucky, you would live to tell the tale. Throughout Europe, the dogma of religious institutions sort of began to lift, and this is where we get to see something called old atheism. This is a form of atheism which basically denounces the gods of one specific culture, but this can't be expressed for fear that atheism would put them in. Atheist as a mere word. It was something you could attach to those ideologies you opposed. For example, Protestants in the 15th century imbued God and the state. Not bad? He was closely related with the School of Knight, which is a modern name given to a group of men centered on Sir Walter Raleigh. These guys were a group of dudes who just studied science, philosophy, and religion, and were all suspected of atheism. Mr. Marlowe, who was a part of this group, wrote a play called Dr. Faustus. And this play really grapples with these ideas of atheism, disillusionment in God and the church. The protagonist of this play, Dr. Faustus, denounces God, blasphemizes the Trinity and the Christian doctrine, and sells his soul to the devil to gain superhuman powers and live a life full of sin and indulgence. So pretty cool guy. And this is especially relevant because he's said to be the embodiment of Christopher Marlowe himself. Kind of pulled a little bit of a baby reindeer there. Anyway, this school of i.e. like was getting really, really popular in 17. And essentially a whole bunch of Parisian churches were transformed into temples of reason, temples that worship science and rationality and the human spirit, and obviously atheism. You don't really worship atheism, but it was like a core belief, I guess. As France's first established state-sponsored atheistic religion, its goal was to distance itself as much as possible from the Roman Catholic Church. France's Christian calendar was abolished. Monasteries, convents, and church properties were seized, and monks and nuns were expelled. They basically were like, we're not going to be Catholic anymore. We're going to worship science and put man at the center of worship as opposed to some divine being. Maximilien Robespierre, the very same, made a rival cult, the cult of the Supreme Being, which was also a way to de-Christianize France, but was in opposition to the cult of reason. Bro just had to put his name out there, I guess. Anyways, all this is happening. Europe is going crazy. God is freaking out. People are de-Catholicizing. There's general unrest, belief in humans and reason and logic and science. And what comes next? Guys, you're not even ready. 1859, Charles Darwin publishes On the Origin of Species. Oh, breaking records, debuted #1 on the Hot 100. You're making history. The idea that humans evolved progressively and were not these divine beings made in the image of God, even more blasphemous that they evolved from the animalistic ape, was potentially the most controversial thing that he could have said at the time. Charles Darwin publishing the ideas of natural selection and evolution is an extraordinary monument in the history of atheism. Now, obviously, as we can see in Europe before this publication, people are starting to have doubts about faith, God, religion, the church. But that was just like an innate feeling that they had. They had nothing to back that up, really. How are you going to prove that there is no God? So there's a whole thing in philosophy for the entirety of the Enlightenment. There is no God. How the fuck are we here then? I don't know. All right, well, then there's a God. That was the whole thing. You just had to deal with that. But now, evolution. So the years following Darwin's controversial little publication were crucial in developing new atheism. Basically old atheism, but with proof. The theory of evolution pitted science and religion against each other. The church famously taught that God created the earth and everything on it, while Charles Darwin's theory of evolution entirely contradicted this and basically said that the world is ever growing and ever changing. It's complex and dynamic and can exist without a divine creator. In the 19th century, believing in evolution and Charles Darwin's theory was seen as the exact opposition of being in the church, being religious, believing in God. Prior to the widespread knowledge of evolution, there was no way for an atheist to explain the existence of the cosmos or intelligent life without having to credit it to a divine creator. Where new atheism mostly differs from old atheism is in its use of scientific and evolutionary theory as intellectual leverage against the idea of belief in a god. It is the new atheist that sees all the questions asked about the universe answered by science as opposed to religion. Although there were the general beginnings of disbelief and disillusionment in God by the time that Charles Darwin published his theory, it was not like he published on the origin of species and people were like, oh, evolution and God isn't real. I mean, that's still not obviously, but by the late 19th and definitely into the 20th century, it becomes a little bit difficult to ignore, especially as science continued to develop, the fact that evolution is real. So in a way, atheism has been a part of our culture for as long as religion has. It's just taken various different forms and has meant very different things throughout antiquity and into modern history. And just as religion was used as a political tool, so too is atheism. I just love the idea that back in the day in the Roman Empire, you could just say that your political opponent was an atheist and then just get him completely like out of there. That's so good. It would seem to be the case that similarly to how humans have evolved through time, so too has our language and our understanding of both God and atheism and the words we use to describe those. Anyways, that's all from me. Thoughts?
Sometimes called, is the idea that all scientific theories must limit themselves to strictly materialistic entities if they're to be considered as scientific. Now, the problem with methodological materialism is that, first of all, there's no good justification for it that's been formulated. It's a completely arbitrary rule that's been imposed on science. Some have said, well, only materialistic explanations count as science because only materialistic explanations invoke observable entities, and all scientific theories must invoke only observable entities.
Yeah, I fell off.
Are not observable. Elementary particles are not observable. Biological origins, the past mutational events or transitional intermediate forms that Darwin posited as part of his explanation for why life looks the way it does now, are not observable. So if you take observability as your criterion of proper scientific method, many views that we already hold would have to be considered non-scientific.
See, a lot of the things that Darwinists talk about, it's not observable. But you have Cedric talking in absolutes. So this is why we're playing this, Cedric, so you can look in the goddamn mirror. Because there's a lot of things that can be challenged with your theory. All right, go ahead, Sister Graham. Please and thank you.
Scientific. Now, of course, many people have used the criterion of observability to try to disqualify the theory of intelligent design because it's true. You can't see the action of the designing agent in the remote past, but that same limitation applies to the competition to Darwinian theory as well. So what I found in my research about the what are called demarcation criteria that are used to justify methodological naturalism or methodological materialism is that these criteria of proper scientific reasoning or method never can effectively do the work of discriminating the scientific status of one scientific theory over and against another. If one scientific theory like Darwinism meets the criterion, then intelligent design does as well. You can't settle the Darwin design debate, for example, invoking these abstract criteria of good scientific method as a way of justifying methodological naturalism in the exclusion of intelligent design. But let me take another riff at this. There's an even deeper problem with methodological materialism or methodological naturalism. And that is that it restricts the intellectual freedom of the scientist to follow the evidence wherever he or she would want to follow it. In other words, it restricts our ability to formulate what might be the best explanations. Here's an illustration. Imagine you go into, say, the British Museum, and you look at the Rosetta Stone. Now, methodological materialism proscribes, it prevents, it forbids considering creative intelligence as a cause. So if you're obeying that dictum, you look at the Rosetta Stone, you see those inscriptions in 3 different languages, and you say, well, I'd like to say it was a scribe, but I bet it must have been something like wind and erosion or chemical etching or something. And this illustrates the problem. We know from our uniform and repeated experience that information always arises from an intelligent source. So when we see information on the Rosetta Stone, we want to infer that an intelligent scribe played a role in the construction or the writing of those inscriptions. But we can't infer that because methodological naturalism tells us that explanation is verboten. Now, it turns out that the same thing happens in the debate about the origin of life. We've got digital code inscribed in the DNA molecule. It is, in a very rigorous sense, as I've shown in my books, a form of functional or specified information. We know that that kind of information always arises from an intelligent source, but we can't consider a creative intelligence or an intelligent source as an explanation because methodological materialism has forbidden us to consider that possibility. We want to say, hey, the primary obligation of the scientist is not to come to the best materialistic explanation, whatever the evidence. The fundamental obligation of the scientist is to follow the evidence wherever it leads to the best explanation, period. And therefore, we want to be open to the possibility that creative intelligence played a role in the origin of the information and other features of life that based on our experience, we know always arise from an intelligent agent.
Yeah. So, Scream, you there?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I done dozed the hell off. Oh, shit. God damn it. Oh, there's. All right. You got one more video, one or two more videos, and then I'm gonna really get into full detail like over the weekend because I'm kind of pressed for time, and I dozed off. I ain't gonna lie. So, but the information that we show, I mean, it challenged materialism. That's what they call that, materialistic naturalism, methodological naturalism. There's a lot of flaws in that. So yeah, let's go to another.
At all excludes the supernatural. It's just not a thing. Methodological naturalism is only using things that have already been verified as a basis for reasonable conclusions. But if you want to put in something new, that's perfectly fine. You just need an experimental result to justify it. So methodological naturalism does not in any way exclude the supernatural at all. Like all of these things are perfectly reasonable to put forth as hypotheses if you can justify
Look at
it with
that.
a
You
testable
don't even include the
result. So the
supernatural.
soul,
That's why I know
no
you
problem.
making stuff up.
Parapsychology.
You heard what he said. They don't even exclude the supernatural. But this new stuff that him and the rest of his team trying to present to us is like they don't deal with it, or like I say, you guys are not the what they call that what's that word, not the affirmative, but you guys are not the answer. I just put it like that because I can't think of the word. You guys just get in front of us, and some of you got dang on people who don't even research or go behind you and check your work, so it sound good. That's what they do, Kareem. It sound good and make it look like they know what they're talking about, but they just mumbling. Go ahead, Kareem. Please thank you.
No problem. Rupert Sheldrake is one proponent who puts it forth quite rigorously in many academic journals. Like methodological naturalism doesn't in any way exclude the supernatural. It's just not a part of it at all. No one in methodological naturalism at all excludes.
See that? None of them excluded, but Cedric and them do. But they're making stuff up. Yeah, I don't know how many more of them little clips I sent to Kareem. But let's do that. We've been on for an hour. So let's, if you got one or two more, we'll show them, and then we're going to regroup on this. But I thought Cedric would show up, but as y'all can see, ladies and gentlemen, he's ducking somewhere in the goddamn bushes. That's what he's doing over there. I can't. Yeah, my tablet is completely dead. I got one charger. But yeah, man, like I said, these guys, man, they get in front of us and they try to sound, like more intelligent, and we're the dumb ones who believe in some kind of creator. And this was never part of our DNA. This was never part of our heritage, our culture. This is something that came out in 1790. 1790, ladies and gentlemen. All right, go ahead, Sister Crew. Please and thank you. My wife mad at me right now, but hey, baby, I love you.
Yeah, it's an article. That was the last video. Yeah, that was an article. You have to read that. Ain't no more videos.
Hi, I'm John Green. Welcome to Crash Course Religions. So this one will be fun and not at all stressful. God is dead and we've killed him, at least according to 19th century German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche was an atheist, meaning he didn't believe in a deity. He was also a harsh critic of Christianity and religion in general. But this wasn't his way of bragging. It was an alarm bell, a warning that there may be some downsides to conceiving of a universe governed by physics and not divine will. Without God, who will we look to for moral guidance? The death of God could spell the end of European society, the whole world.
Society.
And yet, the world has continued to spin. So were the rumors of God's death an exaggeration? Maybe, but Nietzsche's generation was given.
Stop. No, I was just reiterating. No, I'm just saying, y'all heard him. He said European society. So all this atheist stuff, it's this is theirs. It's not ours. You don't hear him saying correlating atheism, evolution to a place where we come from. All right, Sis Grim.
A world where more and more people do not believe in gods, and whether approaching those atheistic beliefs through the lens of religion can be informative, which won't make anyone mad. The word atheism comes from the Greek word atheos, meaning without a god, and that's pretty much what atheism is today, a lack of belief in a higher power. But the word's meaning, like the folks who identify with it, has changed over time. Like back in the 16th and 17th centuries, when the word first gained traction in Europe, the Protestant Reformation was in full swing and people needed a new vocabulary to describe the splintering of religious beliefs that was happening happening. The word atheist was originally coined as an insult, something few people would have identified with. English dictionaries from the 1600s defined atheism as a, quote, damnable doctrine, and often included quotes meant to discourage people from becoming atheists, which, I mean, I guess dictionaries have never been impartial, but it didn't stick. French centuries made the idea of non-belief a lot more mainstream and visible, even as they struggled with their own faiths personally. Similarly, some of the founders of the United States, while not technically atheists, were into deism, where they thought God technically existed, but after making the universe, he just left it alone, like a watchmaker, or like my personal hero Charles Alderton, who invented the perfect soda recipe, Dr. Pepper, and then left it alone to take over the world. Different deists were ignoring, like, the God stuff. Thomas Jefferson, for instance, spent years privately cutting every reference to the supernatural out of a Bible while pasting and moving around certain teachings on morals and ethics. Atheism really took off during the 19th century with the writings of folks like Nietzsche, Charles Darwin, and Karl Marx. While Darwin himself was neither here nor there on the existence of a god, his theories about human evolution were often seen as in opposition to the Christian creation story. And Darwin's friend and fellow scientist Thomas Huxley even debated the highly regarded Bishop of Oxford on the topic, and essentially told the bishop, "I'd rather have an ape for a grandfather than a guy like you." While atheists are still often dangerous, atheism itself continues to grow in popularity. In 2024, studies showed that roughly 28% of Americans identified as religiously unaffiliated. Of course, all those unaffiliated folks aren't necessarily with the category. There's a pretty which comes from a word that means without knowledge. Appropriately, agnostics say they simply don't know whether there's a God. Many think it's impossible to prove or disprove God's existence, and that there's no point in trying. Then you have to believe that everything that exists can be studied through science, which isn't an out.
No, well, I said that they said 24%. That's not
Positively that no higher power exists, and implicit atheism, which
go ahead, sis.
is a passive act of belief in a higher power.
You're not going to believe what happened.
Oh boy, I'm getting a call from a blocked number, which I didn't know was even possible.
Hey, broski, don't hang up. I just got a question. It's one that's been bugging me. And that's what you guys do here, right? You answer questions.
I mean, that doesn't even begin to describe everything we do at Crash Course, but sure, go ahead.
Isn't believing in God just like a better bet than not believing? Like, I mean, if atheists are right, then believing in God doesn't change anything. But if they're wrong, we lose everything. Wouldn't it be better just hedge your bets and believe?
That's actually a pretty popular. God is like the safer bet. So I'll bite. Which one do you have your money on?
That's a silly question. God, the Father, capital G, the one from the Bible.
So not the West African god Anansi, or maybe the Egyptian war goddess Neith. Don't even get me started listing all the literal millions of Hindu deities. And then, of course, there's always the possibility that the one true God belongs to a religion that doesn't even exist yet.
Right, but I don't believe in any of those gods. Oh.
What makes Zeus or Demeter untrue, but your God the only truth?
Listen, man, I gotta make some calls.
You know, I'm starting to think I might actually be getting through to him. That's a picture of his butt with the caption, "This is you." So that's nice. But our friend the Devil's Advocate has brought up a good point, just not the one he was trying to make. Atheism, as we know it today, opposition to Christianity, but the idea itself is considerably older and more diverse than that comparison suggests. In many cultures throughout history, there have been groups who didn't care if the gods and goddesses of their people were really real, and others who specifically didn't believe in the popular deities of their day. Up to 20% of people who identify as Christian aren't sure they believe the God of the Bible is really real, and therefore might be classified as agnostic. And in other religious traditions, including Judaism, it's even more common. Ancient India saw multiple schools within Hinduism that denied the existence of an eternal or personal God. Buddhism was founded by a guy who didn't have much use for deities. Jainism, founded in the 5th century and influenced the nonviolent ideologies of people like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., has no rules about believing in a higher power. In many cases, though, these weren't the atheists we'd think of today. Scholars often use the term non-theism instead of atheism for ancient traditions. These non-theists were simply concerned with questions other than, does God exist? Cultures in ancient China, Greece, and Rome all had their non-theism cliques at various times. In the last couple centuries, though, especially in the United States, atheism has broadened into a way to critique religion, society, and politics, especially the places where society is shaped by religious traditions. The American writer and abolitionist Frederick Douglass, who was formerly enslaved, criticized the hypocrisy of slave-owning Christians. Calamity that could befall me. Suffragist Matilda Jocelyn Gage pointed out similar religious hypocrisy when fighting for the rights of women. And in the 21st century, we've seen the rise of a movement known as New Atheism, popularized by writers like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins. Other writers like Ta-Nehisi Coates have written about civil rights within the framework of a godless universe. In Between the World and Me, Coates imagines no moral arc of the universe bending toward justice, a response to a famous line from Martin Luther King. Where Nietzsche warned about the death of God and what it might mean for a moral society, the New Atheists have advocated explicitly for an ethical obligation to reject the idea of God, centered around the belief that we could solve a lot of our problems if we did away with religion entirely. The New Atheists have at times been labeled dogmatic and even fundamentalist in their belief that there is no God, which has led some to wonder if atheism is also a religion. Now, I admitted in episode 1 that I don't know what a religion is, which means we're already in dicey territory. And as we've seen throughout this series, defining a religion can be a bit like trying to guess how many stars are.
No, we pointed out earlier, it's a religion. Go ahead, Colonel. Okay, yeah.
For lots of others, atheism isn't a framework for sense-making. We might also look for shared practices or gatherings, and there are non-religious communities like the American Atheists and the Sunday Assembly who gather for events and experiences kind of like churches, but who specifically don't believe in God. So shared practices are on the table, although only a tiny percentage. Well, this one clearly varies too. Just like we've discovered the incredible diversity in the beliefs within each religion, atheists share some beliefs and convictions and also have a lot of different priorities. So this one gets a solid maybe as well. Finally, there's doubt. Doubt is the foundation of atheism, and it also might be one of the most universal experiences humans share. We've all experienced doubt in ourselves, each other, and yet we continue to believe in the possibility of a better world despite our doubts. Atheism is just another way of contending with reality. It can mean a strong commitment to a particular kind of ethical thinking and behavior without the looming judgment of a god to enforce it. It can also mean simply having too much going on to think about religion, or believing that the only things that matter are the things we can measure scientifically. Atheism defies broad brush painting. But perhaps the biggest hallmark of atheism is that it has always existed alongside theism. It's not a reaction to, but a complement of the religious frameworks that guide many lives. Whether it can be called a religion is up for debate. I think it boils down to whether you see religion primarily as whatever lenses through which you consider moral imperatives and ultimate concerns, in which case atheism is perhaps, at least for some, a religion, or whether you see religion primarily as a way of seeking connection to and understanding of the less empirical parts of consciousness, in which case atheism is a rejection of religion and best considered outside of it. And if you think I'm going to come to a firm conclusion here, you haven't been watching the rest of this series. Next time, we're talking about religious texts, who wrote them, who's equipped to interpret them, and how they...
All right. Like I say, this weekend we'll get more into detail with this. I kind of, waited a little bit too late to really get into it, and I gotta get up early. Like I said, I appreciate Karima for showing this late. But any last words, Karima? Other than that, if not, let's get up out of here. We'll be back. My foot will be on Cedric's neck. He's running. He's hiding. I ain't seen him in the back chat all day after all that propaganda he was talking. That being said, man, yeah, peace and blessings. We love y'all. We out.
I want you and that young man to tie that knot. I'm gonna pray for you. And I want you to hold on to God's unchanging hand, because he helped Joshua fight the battle of Jericho. Yes.
It's the old
He helped Daniel get out the lion's den. He helped get off the island.
Let me get straight to the business. Yeah. Got them lions in the building. Yeah. Why you lying to the children? Yeah. Why you lying to the children? Yeah. RIGHTEOUS. Man, you know I've been to bed. Man, they know they no contest. Yahuwah, he do the best. We will not see you tomorrow. Cause you cannot go to Thought. All the sons and all the daughters standing hard with big manotas. But my son, he made me Taurus. On that line, I'm still a Taurus. Karate kicking Chuck Norris, 4-5 on my waist. If he started, will not hesitate to get retarded. Oh lordy, he ain't got a PowerPoint, he forest. He running to the hills like a Philistine. Jihad hitting Hamites with the guillotine. Situation turned up with the ratchet team. JJ 7000 to the bait lead. Yeah, I know them haters gon' hate me, but he won't debate me. Pistol off safety. He respond, come wake me. If I don't get up, nigga shake me. If he don't show up, then he fake G. I touch down and make these nigga nuts hate me. Dear brother. Ballin' and crawling all the way from H-Time. Let me get straight to the business. Man, them lions in the building. Why you lying to them children? Why you lying to them children? You gon' cry, you gon' get it. Me, I'm like a frog, nigga, ribbit. Of course, it's in the spirit. I just got the Porsche, she can steer it. Michael got the Rorschach and Willie. Lamborghini doors, you better not spill it. Mama's high, say I'm more than just a villain. Mama's cry, arms open wide for her children. Suicide, immortalized as the realest, yeah. Death by cop, black suicide. Let me get straight to the business. Got them lions in the building. Why you lying to them children? Yeah. Why you lying to them children? Yeah. RIGHTEOUS. Man, you know I've been there. Man, they know they no contest. Yahuwah, he